Americans have a huge need for personal space. It's amazing. And yet we manage to get on airplanes.
Unless you're from New Jersey.
Unless you're from New Jersey,
And space seems to be less.
maybe it's been more crowded. There, okay. All right. So, even though the students for the class that are next door, our acting students, so we'll hear their chatter for a little while, let's still try to take a moment to just get ourselves settled here by bringing our attention to our body sitting here. You know, really noticing the pressure of the chair against the body, the cushion, the temperature in the room, the sound of my voice. Sort of check in with your body. And try to bring your attention away from the busyness of getting here and away for planning for what you're going to do later. And bring your attention to being here now. Try to remember the reason you came here tonight, and using that reason, generate a positive intention to use your time well. It's nice if we can combine that intention with a wish that it not just benefit ourselves, but that it ripples out to benefit others. So this class, was everybody here last week? Okay, so this is the second night of the Discovering Buddhism module on Bodhicitta, how to develop Bodhicitta. And what's Bodhicitta? Who knows what Bodhicitta is? Yes, Betty?
The wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all other sentient beings.
Yay! Yay! So it's the wish to become enlightened. It's a mind that wishes to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So we'll be discussing how does one generate such a mind. Anybody remember what the cause of Bodhicitta is?
Compassion.
Specifically?
Compassion in your mother.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Seeing all beings as one's mother.
Nope. Compassion was the right start. What word am I missing?
Selflessness?
No. Okay, never mind. probably too broad of a question anyway, because all of those things are involved. So, I'm just confused. Ah, there we go. It's not just any compassion.
Uncontrite.
Yeah,
No.
unrelenting 24/7.
No, that's what Bodhicitta is.
Compassion for all beings.
Compassion for all beings. So great compassion is the compassion for all beings. So that's a very important word in our text, is when they say things like great compassion or great love or infinite love or infinite compassion. Then they're referring to this aspect that is universal. So it's not just having compassion. We all have the mind of compassion from time to time. But this is, when they use that word great or infinite or boundless, it means for every single living being. So that's important, because that's a mind of compassion that most of us need to develop. We don't already have that. So what is the foundation of that?
Compassion for oneself.
Although we need that.
The fact that we're suffering.
I just love this, yeah.
I think probably the fact that we have human birth.
All of those are true.
You're asking what's the foundation for our compassion for all sentient beings? I was gonna.
It's a one-word answer.
Emptiness?
No.
Equanimity.
Equanimity. This-
Sounds like ear.
Yep. Okay, so that's why you got the meditation on equanimity in the email last week. Because without it, you cannot develop great compassion. So, but this is a process. So like Lama Yeshe says, if you're gentle with yourself, you will become gentle with others, so don't push. Pushing doesn't work for me, that's why I tell others not to force themselves. We are dealing with a mind, not rocks and concrete, it is something organic. So throughout all of our spiritual practice, no matter how firm we are being with ourselves, we still want to remember that if we're angry with ourselves or beating ourselves up or disgusted with ourselves or impatient with ourselves or frustrated with ourselves, we are practicing minds we're trying to abandon. So it doesn't matter who the object of that anger is or impatience or disgust is, it's still practicing a negative mind that we're trying to give up. So even when we catch ourselves being selfish, self-absorbed, greedy, whatever we catch ourselves being that we know is not the best attitude to have, the appropriate response is patience. That we just, okay, I'm not a Buddha yet, so it's a process. And that's particularly important with this attitude of trying to develop great compassion, great love, and even equanimity. I mean, this is hard to do. It's not easy to do. We are so geared to thinking that we must take care of me and mine. So, my family, my kids, my car, whatever it is. But this a very small circle of concern. That, it's sort of like, you just thought of this, so don't take offense. But you know how when you're training a dog, dogs can feel a lot better if they're crated when you're away, because then they only have a little tiny space to guard, because that's why it works, is that you know, if you leave them in the whole house, they have to guard the whole house. So it's kind of overwhelming. But if you put them in a crate, that's their space. That's what they have to protect. You know. Well, we're sort of the same way. You know. So the thought of trying to care about the entire population of the planet, including all insects, you know, bacteria, etc., not bacteria, but amoebas, you know, we can freak out, think, oh, that's not doable. You know, we don't want to, we have to grow our circle kind of gradually as we can, but intellectually, we can reason it out of why it makes sense to want to go there. So that we can do by developing new ways of thinking about it. And so equanimity is one of those starting points, is really starting to understand that our labels for people are based on what they do for us, whether we see them as helpful to us or harmful to us, or whether we just don't know them at all. You know? So thank you, Hope, for remembering what Bodhicitta is. So, and when you said uncontrived, the feature of bodhicitta that's also important to remember is that the attainment of bodhicitta means that you have this mind all the time. Everything you think, say, or do is under the influence of this wish. So it's not like now when we sit in meditation, we try to bring up the mind of compassion with effort, things like that. Once you achieve bodhicitta, once you attain this state, it is spontaneous and effortless. You no longer have to work at it. So the hard work is now. It's before you attain it. When you attain it, you no longer, it takes your mind actually becomes a bodhicitta mind. It's not just one little state of mind amongst many states of mind. It is the main mind. So according to the Buddha, the reason why it's important for us to develop this kind of mind is that all the joy the world contains comes through wishing happiness for others. And all the misery the world contains comes through wanting pleasure for oneself. So it's really this, that we've got it backwards. You know, our habit of thinking that I have to take care of myself, I have to get what I want, I have to do all these things to make sure I get what I want. That constant self-focus brings us a lot of suffering. And so the more that we can train ourselves to let go of that self-focus and really orient ourselves towards cherishing others, the happier we'll get. So it's sort of like we'll take care of ourselves. That's a side effect. This is a process because we don't believe it at first. Because the reason why we are so self-focused is we really believe that that's what it takes to attain happiness. So the cause of bodhicitta is great love and compassion. Usually you'll just hear it as referred to as great compassion, but actually great love and great compassion kind of arise at the same time. And these are just the minds that wish all sentient beings should be happy and free of suffering. Now the cause of great love and compassion is affectionate love. And so this is the feeling that beings are appealing. You know, that we find, we find them likable. This is where a lot of the work has to go. Because a lot of people see Buddhism as an effort to become detached. You know? But in fact, it's an effort to find everyone appealing. free of attachment, because attachment's when we're selective. You know, attachment's when, ooh, I'm gonna find this person more appealing than that person because this person is preferable to me. They help me more. They like the same things I like. They laugh at my jokes. You know, whatever it is. You know, what the Buddha is, you know, trying to get us to do is start recognizing that that's fine to have preferences. There's not really a whole lot we can do about that we have preferences. However, basing on whether someone is worth caring about, on whether or not they suit our preference, is a path to suffering. Preference is all about me. It's what I like. Wanting others to be happy is all about them.
So I'm confused then with the statement. Should it be something more than like affectionate love is the feeling that all others are attractive or appealing?
No, that would be great affection. I mean, that's what we're working towards. But so
But we're trying to achieve
great love,
great
and,
love and
compassion.
compassion for others, right?
Mhm.
And you're saying here, or it's saying here that this is affectionate love, and then defining affectionate love is is the feeling,
Why can't I update this?
the feeling that others are attractive or appealing. So I'm confused with that because it seems like a contradiction because we were just pointing out that feeling that another is attractive or appealing is all about me.
No, it's not. That's the point. The point is, right now, it's all about me. That's what attachment is.
Right.
What we want to do is broaden what we find attractive
Okay. That's
and
essentially-
appealing,
Right. That's essentially.
so that it's not about us. And so one of the foundations of that is just recognizing all sentient beings are no different from us. That just like I'm called me, so is everybody else. We all have the same name.
Don't you have to have love and compassion for yourself before you can give it to others?
Yep.
So that does become working on me.
Yeah, but it's not with a focus on you. The focus is on, I need to practice the mind of compassion, even towards myself, so that I can become of benefit to others. So the focus is, because that's how to get it, actually. Because one of the ways to develop self-compassion is the recognition, I'm not the only one suffering here. You know, we're all in the same boat. I don't have to feel odd one out. You know, so, you know, that's part of the mind of compassion. It's just like we would feel compassion for our best friend. You know, if they're suffering, we can feel compassion for ourselves when we're suffering. It all depends on what your orientation is. You know, if you've been raised in or developed a habit of mind that says you have to deserve happiness, and I've been taught that I don't deserve it. Buddhism doesn't say you have to deserve anything. It's just you exist. So it's reasonable to want happiness and not want suffering. You know, it's not existing is enough. So we have to overcome, you know, we have to be, you know, recognize when we're treating ourselves without equanimity. When we're thinking we're less than. Because the mind of equanimity sees everybody as equal. We're part of that. This is one of the reasons why cherishing others or wanting to become enlightened for the benefit of others doesn't leave us out. If you become enlightened, do you suffer? No. So your welfare's necessarily taken care of. The whole reason why we need to become enlightened in order to benefit others is we can't teach them how to do the same for themselves if we don't know how. So the difference between, we'll throw in the great affectionate love and our current attachment is that attachment is all about what's in it for me. This idea of affection, when you make it so that you find everybody appealing, worthy of your affection, so to speak, you know, that removes that element of exclusivity. Because affection here is really talking about this idea of caring, that they become part of your circle of concern. Because as soon as someone enters that circle of friends, we more easily care for them. So this is why His Holiness recommends that we make everybody our friend, whether they see us as their friend or not. You know, because in one way you could say, the reason why all sentient beings can be your friend is because we rely on sentient beings to become enlightened. We need them. And what do we need the most out of them?
Practice.
No, we don't need that out of them. Nope. What do we need from them?
Just to exist.
We need them to be irritable, want something from us, We need them to be sandpaper so that our good qualities grow. This is what's hilarious. We're always looking around for people who don't annoy us. Instead of recognizing that, that doesn't do a thing for my spiritual growth. If everything's all nice and cozy around me, I'm not going to develop. And then as soon as something goes wrong, no matter how tiny it is, how fast do you think you get annoyed? It's like when you're having a great day, or whatever that is to you. Like, for me, it's like, lying on a hammock, which really isn't comfortable. Well, let's pretend they're really comfortable. But that thought you have, this is a perfect day for a good book, and lying on the, on the hammock, and there's a nice breeze, and then the mosquitoes come out. And then you really hate those mosquitoes, like it's their fault, that it's a nice day and they need to be out there too. So, this is the problem with just wanting it all just so, because that doesn't help our minds at all. What helps our minds is learning how to tolerate what we don't like, until the point comes where there's nothing that we don't like. That's why a Bodhisattva is delighted whenever there's an opportunity for them to practice patience, generosity, ethics. Does that make sense? It is completely opposite of the way we operate. So, it takes effort. This is, just to even consider, like when something goes wrong, to actually have this thought, wow, this is great. That takes practice all by itself, just being able to go, oh, this is an opportunity for me to learn something new, or stretch myself in this way, or let go of what it, you know, whatever expectation I had, you know, all that stuff. Because if you're on this spiritual journey, those are the kinds of things you want to seek out, not if you're still just grasping at getting what you want, you know, that's not really a spiritual journey, is it? I mean, not the way I would think of a spiritual journey. Granted, I wasn't on one until I met Buddhism, so I may not know much about it, but, you know, so this idea of trying to go beyond not wanting to harm anything and see the advantage of actually going, including them all in your circle of friends, you know, this is just a way of making it easier to not start, you know, caring only about friends, you know. It makes it so like, okay, it's fine if you just care about friends if everybody's your friend, you know. So it makes, you know, it just kind of changes the, because if we concentrate on, I'll never be able to include that politician or that criminal or that, I don't know, gender, you know, into the group that I care for, then we have to really work hard. Instead, if we can find the common ground and bring them in, it's a lot easier. And so the Buddha, you know, one way to do that is this recognition that all living beings want to be happy and not to suffer. And in very simple ways, you can even see it, you know, that what that means for perhaps an insect is please don't step on me. I want to live. So it's not, we don't even have to get down to how do you define happiness. But certainly, no one wants to be harmed. Yeah.
Do you have to like them and still?
No.
So you can have compassion but still not like them.
But you know, eventually what happens is you quit. Part of all of our difficulties arise from our ignorance, arise from our misunderstanding of how things exist, you know? And one of the ways, the fundamental way that we're confused is we think we exist by our nature. You know, that there is a tenderness nature, you know? There's a hope's nature, there's a French testament. I almost said Francisco, like San Francisco. So we think that there's, you know, like we think our friends are our friends because they have that nature of being our friend. They could never not be our friend, you know, because, you know, they have those qualities. We completely lose sight of the fact that you can't pinpoint anyone. You know, so if so-and-so who I work with, who I only see at work, who I only have to always ask, you know, to share something because that's the way it's set up, and they always have to say, well, in just a minute, you know, if I say, gosh, they never can just give it to me, you know, it's always just a minute. If I think that's who they are, I am making their identity fixed, you know, and that's a problem. We do it with ourselves, we do it with everybody else. We go, they are this, not, there's this action that annoys me. And not only that, we have this opinion that action that annoys me, so even if we acknowledge it's just an action that annoys us, we think and it would annoy everyone. Yeah, really? Everything is just relative. What we find likable, somebody else finds annoying. You know, what we want to talk about, somebody else finds boring. You know, it's just, it's completely relative to us, since that's where our focus is. You know, since, I mean, I find it really hilarious. I mean, if you take the Buddhist teachings all to the extreme, you know, there's a reason why we have stereoscopic vision. Because we really do believe we're the center of the universe. You know, and in every moment, things appear to us that way. You know, to every single one of us. So, if you do not have equanimity, you have no basis for affectionate love to arise for anybody. Why would that be?
It's the stuck on your side. It's all about me stuff.
Yeah, so what does that mean? So what would you need for affectionate love? If you don't have equanimity, what would you need?
Whoa, you didn't have that. You need to know emptiness, right?
No, you just need them to have a quality you like.
Oh, okay.
I think just acknowledging that they're no different than I am. They want happiness and they don't want suffering.
Yeah, that's equanimity. So if you don't have equanimity, then you have to start playing the what's in it for me game. You know? So I'm just trying to show how these build on each other. So to develop bodhicitta, we need to really look at our own situation, meditate on the truth of suffering. We have to want to change. You know, if we think that cherishing others brings us happiness, you know, we have to look at, are we unhappy? You know, and of course, in this context, we're not talking about those moments of great grief or sorrow. We're just talking about the general dissatisfaction of existence. You know, that things don't work out perfectly, that, you know, and even when they're perfect, we're, you know, very quickly want to go to something else. You know, it's sort of like, oh, that was nice, but, you know, what's next? So, you know, that just sense of always there, always needs to be more. And then we have to investigate the situation of others. You know, this is how we discover, just like me, others are suffering. And really understanding that we're all in the same boat. And in that way, we can start to feel that equanimity. And if we don't look at it from the angle of what's in it for me, you know, so these people over here help me, so they're my friends, and these people over here get in my way, so they're my enemies, and these people I haven't met yet, so they're just, you know, I just don't even bring them to mind at all. If we just look at it from the perspective of, you know, what is our common ground? Then we can see that everybody wants the same thing. We don't know what we're doing, but everybody wants the same. We're no different in that respect. And so that's a good starting point for having a foundation that allows bringing them into your circle of concern. You know, just like when you see some news program about total strangers, like last year, a year ago, you know, so, you know, maybe you've never been to Parkland, you've never, you know, never had heard of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School, you know, they're all strangers, you know, but now you have you know, part of you mourns with them for what they're experiencing today and have all year, you know. It doesn't take much for us to actually bring people in. And this is our Buddha potential. This is our Buddha nature, the the fact that it is natural for us to have compassion and concern, even for total strangers when they experience something that we know would be heartbreaking, you know, or scary, or we can picture our kids at that school, or being a teacher at that school, you know, because we can relate to a lot of this practice is about understanding how similar we are, that we can picture just about any human being in different scenarios and know that how difficult it would be for them. It wouldn't be much different for them than it is for us. You know, so when someone says something really ugly to you or really mean to you, you know how that feels. So when someone does that to someone else, you can sympathize. It's easy. And then if you really work hard, before you say something mean to somebody else, you can think, oh, I know how bad that feels when I hear that. Maybe I won't be so harsh. Yeah.
Okay, there is a person that I absolutely, I just can't even see my way to feeling like they're a suffering human being. They're in a position of power, they lie, they are actively destructive to other people.
What about that says they're happy? Anything?
I can't put myself in that same boat.
You've never lied.
No.
Okay, well, this is where you have to go.
Okay.
So you think about all the things that make you angry about this person, or just like you feel like you can't understand them at all. And you break it down into parts so that it's not so huge, because you're probably not exactly like them, blah, blah, blah. But really look at, okay, so they lied. Okay, have you ever been in that situation where you've lied? What was motivating you to lie? Probably a similar thing is motivating them. It's not correct. We think there's something in it for us, so we lie. So they have power, and they use power over. Have you ever done that? You've never used power over another person.
My daughter, yes.
Well, there you go.
Raising.
Yeah, well, there you go. So we want to really look, why do you do that? Because you think it's in her best interest. So somebody might think it's in the company's best interest, or in their interest for their career, or their interest for their family. It's not correct. Power over is not something that is actually constructive. Power with is helpful. Taking responsibility for raising children is helpful. But using power over is not a particularly useful skill. It may be effective, but in the long run, it doesn't help someone grow. It's just force.
What about actively destructive?
Have you ever done that? Were you two ever?
Like I can remember.
Well, you want to try to remember. You want to look at a 2-year and go, I used to be like that. I'm not saying you ever had to like someone. It's just that we need to recognize that when people behave in what we consider bad actions, they come from somewhere. It's not because they're a human being that they do it. It's because they're mistaken about what's going to make them happy. Some people really believe power over is the path to happiness. Some people really believe getting what you want, it would ever mean, ends justifying the means, will make them happy. I've never really been in a position of great power, but I can imagine me abusing it. I can see how that would be easy to do if you're in it and you're not very mature, Now, so it's really helpful. It's not about liking them. It's just about understanding, how does someone's mind get there? Well, someone who doesn't check their anger, who never thinks it's a real problem. Oh, I haven't killed anybody, so who cares, You know, what's the big deal? That kind of thing. Well, that's how they get more and more angry. Or authoritarian, dictator-like, that kind of thing. What we have to do is understand that we have states of mind that are similar, and if we didn't think they were worth controlling, this is where they lead. So we can rejoice that we have some desire not to go there, because somewhere along the way we've learned that that's not, beneficial behavior. Does this make sense? Because this is important. Because those are the people that will keep coming up in our face, and we keep going, yeah, accept them. Well, you can't have bodhicitta if there's an accept them. And those are the people we most need to help. Because they can wreak havoc with themselves. They're not on any path to happiness, and they harm a lot of people around them. So all those people, it's just the cycle just starts spinning out of control. Yes. Judy?
Well, I was just thinking that, how do I deal with these people? Of course, in everybody's life. But I think the key is compassion. I think for me, anyway, I think that this person, just like me, has had probably many lives and has reasons for their behavior. I might not understand them, but there are reasons.
And they're not correct reasons.
They're not, no. Yeah.
We have to remember that. It's not that they're on the right track, they're on the wrong track. And they're going to have more suffering because of it. And they might even get worse, And how many hell realms are they going to be in? And for how long? Do they have any tools to work with? This is the thing. So compassion for the fact that they lack all of that is appropriate. I'm not saying that's easy to do, but our annoyance is all about us. Oh, I would like to just never have to see them again. Oh, fabulous. That's all about you. This is what we have to recognize, is we will never have a better world if we keep wanting to put all those people that are just vile in our own opinion on an island somewhere else. That doesn't work. For one thing, it makes us less tolerant because we don't have that same paper around. So then it's just the people who are not quite as bad as that start to irritate us. And then we have to send them to the island. And then the people that are left, on the next level that irritate us, and we still have no tolerance for them. So we send them to the island. And finally, we're alone. Because we haven't learned how to tolerate anyone else. And I'm sure we're not happy with ourselves either, because we probably started there anyway, So this is the problem. As long as we blame others for our state of mind, we don't progress. It's not his fault or her fault that you hate them. That's from your side. I'm putting words in your mouth, but that's from your side. And we can change that. We don't have to like them. We don't have to think that their methods are useful. It's just that we can have compassion that they are really suffering. So like the Buddha's, my favorite sutra, because I was such an angry person, but the Buddha's sutra on anger, tells you, like, if you meet someone in the road, and there's nothing attractive about their actions, but their words are kind, then you focus on their words and you don't worry about their actions, right? And then you meet someone whose words are not at all kind, but their actions are kind. So you focus on their kind actions. And then you meet someone on the road whose actions aren't kind, whose words aren't kind. And in fact, you don't think there's a single thought in their mind that's kind. So what do you do with them? You take them home and take care of them because they really need you. Because they are really suffering. That's the mind we want to develop. You know, that recognizes that people who behave badly, speak badly, think badly, are really in trouble. You know? So, that's where a bodhisattva would want to go. Because a bodhisattva is not remotely concerned about how they're treated by others. They're only concerned about how they can help. Yeah.
In that example, if there's no interaction with them, and my perception, because it's about myself,
Right.
my perception is that they are wrong, but there's no interaction, and I could develop compassion, some type of love for them. You say that those are the type of person that we should have.
If we can. I don't have the skill.
The other question is how can we help them if there's no interaction with them?
Well, you know, this is why we have to respect our limitations. You know, if you're, you know, we have to understand that we're not Buddhas yet. I'm not even a bodhisattva yet. I don't have bodhicitta 24/7. So my ability to help someone else is limited. The main place I need to focus is my reaction to those people. I need to work on my mind. I'm the one out of control in my response to them, you know. So before, you know, if you do manage to develop, you know, a pure compassion and pure love for such a person, then perhaps you're ready to be able to help, to actually help, you know. In the meantime, you may just have to develop your tolerance so you don't behave badly in their presence. So that you don't use them as an excuse to, you know, do things that aren't going to get you in line. Short answer. What? Please.
Personally, I have a lot of experience with a certain scenario as such. I don't bother to say this because I want anybody to come up and say, oh, so sorry. But when I was grown, my mother's second husband used to beat me like a piñata, and her, and my sister. So I would have to put myself between that a lot. I hated this man. You know, like with an intensity that my bones would burn. And every time I'd see his face, I'd get like that. And anytime you came at me with a finger in my face, you told me what to do, right there. So I sit with him a few times a week.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't go away
No.
easily.
And I sit with him. And I still love him. That's why it hurts so bad. You see? So I know he's off his whack. He always was. It can, you know, I'm not saying I'm some enlightened person by no means.
No, well, I mean, you've
Yeah.
said that you
Yeah.
have a problem with anger.
Yeah.
And so we need to recognize that it's from our side. We can't control what they're doing to us. If we, you know, I mean, if we can get away from them, get away from them. You know, we don't have to take abuse just because, you know, someone else is suffering. That's ridiculous. You know, but what we want to develop is the ability to tolerate the fact that that person treads the earth. I mean, really, I mean, that's how I am about politicians. Haven't met them, you know,
I feel the
but I
same.
can hate them with an intent, you know, with a totally useless intensity, you know, and that hurts me. So it's really about, okay, and so sitting with them is so important, to just be able to sit and go, oh, this is a really good example of me not, you know, working to control my response, you know, and we can justify it up and down for all the ways they harm others, all the ways that they're wrong, all the ways, that has nothing to do with our response.
feeling that they are mentally ill is just an excuse I'm giving myself for reacting the way I do.
Well, if they're mentally ill, then your reaction's really out of line.
Okay.
You know, the way the Buddha described it is, it's like trying to talk to a drunk, trying to reason with a drunk, someone who's intoxicated in this moment. You know, that there's absolutely no point to doing that. So someone who is out of control with their body, speech, or mind, you know, intervening other than trying to prevent them from harming you or someone in the vicinity, you know. And then you could only do that if you actually can do that. I mean, you know, we don't always have that ability. You know, like if your boss just rants and raves and blah, you know, and it's just, you know, the main thing you can do is quit. You know, and you may not be able to do that because, you know, it's not wise to do that without having another job. So it's, you know, I mean, this is the thing. And so we have to sit and, you know, and it's like every time they hook you, then you could go, oh yeah, I'm going to practice a little more on that. But it's almost as if we think, and I'm just, you know, I know when I'm in that situation, it's almost as if I think that who I am is being damaged by who they are. That's grasping on everybody's self. They are this, you know. So this is the thing. It's trying to take responsibility for our part. You know, we can't do that for someone else. I mean, if you're a police officer, then you have, you know, if someone's doing something that's illegal and harmful and da-da-da-da, then you can arrest them and take them off the streets. And if you're a judge, you can put them, you know, in jail and keep them outside of society. You know, but you know, so it's not that we have to allow someone to harm others. It's that we don't have to see them as evil. We can see the behavior as evil. We can see the futility of that behavior in terms of trying to be happy. You know, Hitler thought if you just eliminated all the people you don't like, then that'd be grand, you know? It's just not true. So we certainly can stop a Hitler, but we don't have to hate Hitler to do that. That's where we get, you know, we don't have to, because according to the teachings, our consciousness has existed since beginningless time. So, and if it's not, if there isn't any, you know, that you are this, then you can change. The mind is always available to be changed. It isn't damaged by our mistaken ways of thinking. However, you know, if we don't check, you know, like if I don't check my mind of anger in this life, you know, then it's going to be harder in the next life, harder in the life after that, because I'll be better and better at it. You know? And then you would wake up one morning and you're Hitler. And then it's this thing about, you know, the Buddha said, okay, guess what the cause is of someone having that kind of power?
Some good things.
It's good qualities. It's good past actions. You know, we are total mixed bags. And we also just don't get it. You know, as soon as like we learn in this life to share, that doesn't mean we don't have to relearn that in the next life. Until we have much deeper realizations, we have to learn it again. But the more habituated we are to behaviors, the likelihood is better that we'll bring it with us. You know, so that if we're really well practiced in generosity in this life, then it's likely in the next life we will also be generous and we'll practice it some more. Oh, it also could go the other direction. So somebody suddenly has all these good seeds ripening, all this potential for having wealth and power and all this stuff ripens, and then you use it badly. So you exhaust all that positive potential, you know. So that's, you know, when you step back and look at the big view. So, but just from moment to moment, if we recognize that just like we can be totally ugly, you know, but that's not who we are. And we can be totally kind, and that's not who we are. We're just, it's a dependent arising. You know? And what we want to do is make it so it doesn't matter what these conditions are out here, that no matter what the conditions are, we respond in a way that our inner wisdom says is the appropriate direction to go. You know? So that no matter what's happening, whatever the condition is, we don't respond because we're scared, greedy, you know, jealous. Does that make sense? Now this is a lot of effort. I mean, it's not easy. But, you know, we can imagine that when we're in the presence of someone that really hooks us, that we really find difficult to be around and not bring out the worst in us, you know. You know, if we keep reflecting on how much better we would feel if we didn't react that way. I don't live in fantasy land and pretend they're a good person, you know, that kind of thing, but just in this place, like, I don't have to react. I don't have to be hooked by this.
The concept exists in modern psychology as well, where when we react harshly to behavior of another, it's usually quite indicative that we see that characteristic in ourselves.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's possible,
Yeah.
but that may be when we get most vehement in our dislike of it. You know, I think there's probably some truth to that, but I mean, I don't know. I just think it's really not relevant, because again, it's bringing up a justification, you know.
It does help me, though, kind of also put another
It's a good way to look.
view. Yeah,
Yes, I mean, this is what I mean by when you look at someone acting a certain way, you really want to go, have I never treated someone that way? Because the Buddha said, if we're receiving, if we're experiencing someone's bad actions, we created the cause for that. And it's even more specific than that. We've treated this person that way in some previous life. So it's just coming around. You know, it's just a gigantic circle in time. You know, so, you know, but, you know, that's usually not enough, because until we have some realizations, you know, it's like, well, I haven't treated him that way in this life. This, you know, so, hey, get over it. But we just, you know, but we want to remember that we are capable of behaving badly, given conditions. If we were raised in different conditions, if we had things going wrong in our lives in certain ways, that we are capable of behaving really badly towards others. And that can help us have some compassion, that we don't know what's going on for them. We don't know where they came from, what their life has been like. We know nothing about them, you know, but we can know that those behaviors arise from not great circumstances, either because someone's taught them, you know, that this is how you behave, this is how you get ahead in life, you know. So, and if you want to get ahead in life and have no friends at the end of your life, you know, go for it. So, you know, so we can find some kind of, but these are really those perfect storms. you know, these are the things that we really want to look at in ourselves, you know, when we're faced with those conditions, because most of us just go straight into justifying our response. You know, they're just bad people. What jerks, you know, whatever, and that just doesn't help us. And like I said, you don't have to like them. That's not the point. The point is just try to understand how do people, you know, what are the dependent arisings that are unfolding here.
So can I ask you a question about terminology?
Sure.
So when we use the word compassion, is that more like the
What does
word
compassion mean?
empathy?
Now, what
Empathy?
does compassion mean?
I don't know.
Okay, the definition of compassion is the wish to free, that someone is free of suffering. That's what compassion is. So one of the ways to grow that is to reflect on our suffering and really wish ourselves to be free of it. Not to have to sit there and try to figure out if we deserve it, or, you know, or any of that. But when that, you know, to just be able to sit with it, you know, that, oh, this is suffering. And it's okay to wish to be free of that. And then we can develop, when we see others suffering, whether we see it through their behavior or their words, you know, by them acting badly, we can wish them to be free of suffering.
Which then brings me to the question of action, right? So we've talked about thought, speech, and action with respect to compassion.
Is there any action in the wish that someone is free of suffering?
Yes, I suppose there is. Yeah.
What?
The thought.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
It's just a thought.
Move.
It's just a thought. And that, we really need the wisdom to understand that. Because it frees us up to have compassion even though we don't know we can't help. Because so often our behavior is driven by our dislike of feeling helpless. That we'll try to fix things or interfere or, you know, be dismissive of someone else's capabilities because we just want to fix it because we can't stand feeling helpless. And that's about us again. We turned it around to make it about us.
So I want to stay on this point for a bit, if it's okay. So compassion, we can still have compassion for others, not necessarily liking or liking
Why not?
what they do, right?
Right. I mean, what does like have to do with it? This, you know, it's
So-
easier when we like them. This is why we want to develop affection for everyone.
Yeah.
But because our instinct, you know, is that if someone's difficult, they are a problem, and we shouldn't have to deal with them at all.
So it's not so much about a feeling tone as it is about a perspective, an ability to appreciate the perspective of another.
It's about reasoning.
Yes, so I'm there with you. So
That's
see,
why compassion is a correct state of mind.
I'm just trying to correlate it because my training teaches me about empathy. And it's exactly what you said in terms of I can't even begin to help anyone unless I'm able to establish an empathetic relationship.
I don't think that, I don't know,
Yeah,
because I mean, I don't like to mix Western psychology with
understand.
Buddhism, because
Yeah.
I'd have to be an expert in Western psychology and an expert in Buddhist psychology to be able to do that, and I'm neither.
Yeah. So just for me, it's the terminology begins to seem similar.
And it may be.
I'm not gonna say it's the same, but.
Yeah, I just find that Western psychology has an awful lot to do with self.
Everything.
Well, I mean, you know, so it's like, to me, it gets you up to a certain point, so you have a healthy sense of self. But if you don't let go of that and then move forward to say, oh, enough about me.
Yeah.
let's move on. So, because I know that from my personal
This
experience.
is a helping relationship. It's not really described that way because you're more or less using yourself as a vehicle.
Right. And see, this is the thing, you know, it's just we have to really be clear that in some relationships, like parent-child, you have a whole lot more sort of permission to be much more directive with your actions and speech and all of that, because you're responsible for this person, you know, and you're trying to do your best to raise them to be functioning adults. If you are a therapist, then you have a certain responsibility there that does not exist for people who are not therapists or who are not parents. If you're in a relationship with somebody, then you have that relationship gives you permission to talk about things that are personal and try to, you know, all this kind of stuff that you wouldn't have those conversations with a stranger. So you always have to keep that in mind, you know, so something that you might be able to do in your profession might not be remotely appropriate at home, you know, so, you know, and it may not fit within what Buddhism is helping us develop. I don't think Buddhism can hurt you in your profession.
Right.
You know.
I see it the reverse. It's very helpful to understand this perspective.
Yeah, so you know, but it's just that we have to really keep in mind that the words may not always match up because they translated these words, they used existing words, and so they may not mean exactly the same thing. So we try to do our due diligence and make sure we're understanding the word. So in Buddhism, or in this context, compassion is the wish that someone be free of suffering. Okay, Bodhicitta is going further. Bodhicitta is a mind that wishes all beings to be free of suffering and taking responsibility to help them with that. I'm going to become enlightened in order to benefit sentient beings. What does that say about what you need to benefit sentient beings?
A whole lot of skill.
You need to become enlightened. So this should give us pause.
Well, just from my perspective, we can begin now, but we take very small steps.
We also have to, yeah, but we have to recognize, we really have to be careful, because our minds of pride, our minds of, you know, thinking that we know what's best for someone else may be wrong. You know, just like a parent who has to step back and let kids fail, you know, so that they learn how to cope with that, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it's gotta be terribly difficult to do. I can't even imagine how horrible that must feel, to kind of go, okay, you know, I suspect this won't turn out well, but, you know, but this is the, you know, we want to really be aware of our limitations when we think in terms of helping, but beyond wishing.
I was thinking more, not along those lines, but more about, what you said much earlier, you know, that we create our own suffering, and that partly is because we have this identity with this self,
You're right.
you know, this, you know.
That's what
if we
its
can let-
foundation is,
If
yeah.
we can let go a little bit of that with the self, we can then begin to put others first.
Yes, and so really, I mean, the thing is that if the biggest, according to the teachings, the best way we can help others is to work on our mind. You know, the more we can remove our attachment, our aversion, our greed, our cravings, all of that, everybody around us, the more we really create the mind that doesn't want to harm anybody. You know, everybody's a little safer in the world because you're not going to harm them. So that's the good news, because that's actually under that's within our ability. As opposed to, saying, ooh, I need to rescue the world from this person. Because I know so much, so I'm gonna, I mean, even Buddhists can't do it. If Buddhists could change everybody, none of us would be here. We'd already be enlightened and be in bliss. It really is an internal process that we have to do ourselves. What we can be, it's like, I remember one time when I was at Plum Village, the monks and nuns, pretty universally, people's parents don't want their kids to ordain. At all. And even, most of the monks and nuns in Plum Village had a Vietnamese background, whether they were actually from Vietnam or, from other countries, with a Vietnamese heritage. Absolutely. None of the parents wanted their kids to ordain. They saw it as just your, path to poverty, That's it,
Right about that.
So, but all of these monastics, would say 2 or 3 years down the road, they were so happy that their kids had ordained because they saw how peaceful they were and how much happier they were, and that it benefited their families just to be around them. So the more that we take care of ourselves, our presence becomes helpful. It's like when you see someone who say you don't know very well, or you might, and they lose it, at the office, and everybody's kind of like, oh my goodness, what do we need? What should we do? And everybody's so grateful when that calm person comes in and starts to take care of things, because they don't scare us. It's like, oh, somebody has sort of a sense of what to do, like, don't panic. When I was living at a nuns community, and this was part of a Dharma center, a retreat center, we had people who would come all the time who were not well. They had strong mental illness. In fact, the hospital in the nearby town would tell the people, say, oh, well, send them up to Chimrazy. Like as if we were trained.
Send them to the booths.
We had to actually
You have to learn.
call them and say, don't do that. We are not trained. So that would mean every now and then you'd walk into the meditation hall and somebody would be having, some raging anger thing going, or, all kinds of things. And so everybody was so grateful for the people that knew kind of what to do, and they'd come in and just, so we're all standing there, those of us who don't have a clue what to do, kind of going, just don't freak out, just stay calm. Stay calm. Staying calm is always good, But then you'd see, you would observe someone else who knew more than just to stay calm, but could actually perhaps help the person be safe, and all those things. And it was so wonderful to watch them in action to kind of get a sense of what you could do. But this happened all the time. I mean, this wasn't, it wasn't like daily, but it was really regular. So you just, you realize that your own fear of not being helpful, how dangerous, and how distorted our ways of thinking become, because we hate feeling that way. It's just like, oh, please, may someone save me from this moment. So you don't think about the other person at all. It's really pathetic, but this is where we start, So we have to know our limitations. We also need to recognize that getting control of our own response helps. The whole world would be a better place if every single one of us came from a positive state of mind. Now this takes effort. So, and it, so anyway. So remembering that all of us on the whole planet are all on this continuum of states, of consciousness. And it's all a matter to, like how far we are on the edges is just a matter of degree. I mean, and it's just this life, in some past life we might have been way further, So being able to approach others with a real openness of the possibility you may have been there once and someone took care of you, that, opens up a door to just, to not being so reactive. And then it's really, this is one of the things that I find so helpful in those situations is to think about, I don't want to repeat this relationship, so what can I do to disengage my reactivity so that I don't repeat it? And that takes a lot of sitting and letting go and realizing I don't have control over this person. It's not my fault they're acting this way. It's my fault that I'm in their presence. But that's what karma's about. And since everybody has that person in their lives, and probably even more than one, and we are that person for other people, it's so easy to forget that, that probably some people really are not thrilled when we show up to the party. So, because we're just not their style. Trust me, nuns show up to parties. It's really very funny how you can just see my family kind of going, do we have to invite her to so-and-so's 60th birthday party? Fortunately, it was safe for the 90th birthday party. They all figured I couldn't ruin that too much. But, but this is the, what can you say? I agree with them. I'm not somebody I'd invite to a party either. So, but this is, so that we just want to really be amused by our own we give things so much power, moments. Dealing with that difficult person, like that, like somehow they have all the power instead of recognizing that, no, I have the power to control my reaction. I'm just thinking of the time that I, at the top of my lungs, cursed a doctor out in a pediatrician's office for giving me a penicillin shot in my butt. I was very, very sick, and I was 14. I wasn't like 30. But my poor mom, just having, first of all, to just witness my horrible behavior, and then having to walk out into the waiting room where everybody's just heard me be so horrible, and you could just see her kind of going, trying to get smaller, and then I needed more, and I was really, really sick. And so we had to stop at some little town in North Carolina and at their hospital, because I could no longer open my mouth at all. My throat was just getting bigger and bigger or something, I don't know. And my dad goes in and goes, she's not getting any shots. You must find another way. So, and I was 14. I'm 63. I remember this very well because that's how bad I was. But, so these are my moments that are helpful when someone else isn't acting too well, because I totally know how capable I am of it. But,
So if you don't react, you don't give them power. Or you
they
don't-
never had any power to begin with.
So by not reacting, you sort of.
You take your own control. This is what we keep thinking, if they would just behave well, I'd be okay. Well, you can be okay whether they're behaving well or not. I mean, good grief. Anybody who's raised children through the stage of toddlership, and been able to just, let them just scream their bloody lungs out and you just don't get bothered. It's the same thing. We can control, all we have to do is see that person as just like that toddler. They're trying to
And
get
have
their own
compassion.
way and they're screaming, yes, and have compassion for their
Compassion
suffering.
For their suffering.
Yeah. But you're not gonna try to comfort them, because, hey, they're acting out.
You don't have to like them.
Yeah,
You don't have to dislike, you don't have to hate them either.
right. Just like you don't hate your toddler, but you don't like the behavior. The behavior's like, I can't wait till this stage is over, But you also, the compassionate thing isn't to try to do whatever you can to get them to quiet down. No. You go, oh, we're leaving the store now. Because that's the compassionate parental thing to do.
That's the wise thing, that's where the wisdom comes in, knowing.
Yeah.
Right, the wise thing.
Yeah, we don't want idiot compassion.
Very true. Very true. That's dangerous
Where we
stuff.
just, because they're suffering, and, we just try to fix it, without any wisdom. And then we have compassion fatigue. So, but it is really hard. But every time that person enters into your, like you turn on the radio and you hear the news, and there's that politician that annoys you to no end, comes on, that's that opportunity to remind yourself, it's not them that's the problem in this moment, it's my response. They're not even here. It's like when you yell at the TV, oh, that's brilliant. So, it's this recognition, I'm the one who's out of control, Bad enough they were out of control, but now there are two of us out of control. So, yes, Judy.
So then the idea is more like you only have, not that we have control, because we're not at that level, but it's only our own mind that we can have anything to do with.
Right, and that's what we're trying to take control of.
Right, so in that instance, I would say to myself then, for my own sanity, I have to let go of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's where we start, is just sort of like, oh, I am creating my own suffering in this moment. So at least I can stop that. Yeah, and that frees you up for the possibility of seeing if there's something you actually can do to help with the situation, But you can't do that when you're hooked. You just want them to disappear. It's like, right after the movie Jaws came out, and I just really wanted sharks to not exist. Because now I was scared to go swimming in the ocean. And I pretty much never got over that. So, he didn't let his children see the movie or read the book.
Dun, dun.
And then we thought, you should have put that on the label. I'm not letting my kids read this. So, I spent an awful lot of time in the ladies' room when I did that movie. I just went, because I had read the book. Thought, I'm not going to watch this part. All right. So since we didn't get to it this week. Next week. So there are two strategies that the teachings use to, that recommend for us to develop bodhicitta. And one is called the sevenfold cause and effect, where you try to see all beings have having been your mother. So that's based on this idea that we've had beginningless lives, and in every one of those lives, we had a mother. And so all beings, since there are no new lives being, no new consciousnesses arising, we're all just trading places on what role we play, So every sentient being's had a chance to have actually been our mother. And so from that vantage point, we see them as having been kind to us. And so His Holiness says, if that's just, sorry, we can't go there, then you can think of it in terms of your very best friend, and think of it as, well, if it's, it's just logical. If we've had beginningless lives, and then no new, new minds being created, at some point, we've interacted with someone and had the causes and conditions in that life for them to be our very closest friend. So instead of looking at what someone has done for us lately, we just say, it's really possible this person was my most supportive, person in my life. And then we think about the kindness of that person. So we use someone from this life as an example in our minds of the kind of kindness, like for our own parents, we wouldn't have life if they hadn't given birth to us, If we didn't have a caretaker as a small child, we wouldn't be here. Whether it was our parents or someone else, we simply, you're helpless when you're born. You absolutely, if you're alive now, had care, whether it was kind care, pleasant care, unconditional care or not, we had enough care to still be alive. So we can see that as an act of kindness or an act of sacrifice. And then we have that, what usually arises when you think about your best friend, and you think about all the things they've done for you, then that wish to repay their kindness sort of naturally bubbles up. So we want to start taking this approach to seeing the possibility that not just our best friend in this life, but that everybody's played that part at some point. So that's how we can make them appealing. Have affection for them. Because that's sort of what comes from thinking about their kindness. That's how we respond. That's why we put people in the friend category. Because they've helped us in some way, and we appreciate it. And from that affection, then just like for our friends when we find out they're suffering, compassion arises. We really wish them to be free of it. If our parents are suffering, we really wish they were free of it. And so at that stage, we can start looking at expanding our circle of concern. That it's actually possible that all beings with a mind at some point were that incredibly kind person in our lives. And just like, we would really trade places with our child who's terribly sick, because we want to take the suffering away from them. We develop the highest intention to develop the capacity to help all those kind sentient beings. So these kinds of meditations are done in little stages. And so you start with someone that you really have relied on in your life. It may have just been for a short period of time. People come and go in our lives, But we really think about that role, just, and keep our minds just open to the possibility everybody's played that role. But then we think about all those kindnesses, the ways in which we relied upon them. And allow that, those good feelings bubble up, where you really care for them, and you really, you want to, you want that Hallmark card reaction. You want to work with these things in quiet reflection until you have that experience. So you think of someone, and that may be all, that's as far as you get, the first part may be just finding someone to think about, but then, but so that, because eventually you want to be able to just be able to, when you think of them, that experience arises, where you just have that, mushy gratitude, wish they never would suffer kind of mind. Because this will help us fuel that desire to cultivate our good qualities, follow the path, so that we can become fully capable of benefiting others. But we start small and then just keep working on this. And then we keep working on the logic of why anybody can be a potential friend. It's just a dependent arising. It just depends on causes and conditions. Just depends if they're the fireman that comes and rescues it out of the burning house. So when sometimes it's just a matter of thinking about all the people who accidentally came into our world, and became friends, or just, that I was so glad you came by, right at that moment, kind of thing. It's like my car broke down one time when I was like about 20, and, it was my first real time, my car just not working, and it's in the middle of the street, and I'm kind of standing there going, I don't know what to do. We're just sort of like, okay, now what? I really just didn't have any idea at all. And some, person probably in his 50s stopped and said, looks like you're having trouble. And I said, well, look and see, but it just sort of got me started, So like, okay, now what? And it's just sort of like, oh, I so appreciate that person. I can see him plain as day. It's the only time I've ever seen him, but it's just sort of like, thank you for coming by. We have been that for others. We've been that person. And then, so we want to start, really cultivating how fortunate we've been in our lives from the actions of others, just how, and have that wish to repay that kindness. And the best way to repay that kindness is to become enlightened. So then we can benefit them no matter what circumstances are arising for them. Make sense? So we'll have you'll get, a long meditation about this, but you do it in parts because, but once you get really familiar with these meditations, then it can take seconds for each step, because you've really developed your mind into thinking this way. It's still contrived because you still have to use effort. It's not like you're walking around 24/7. It's mine, unfortunately. But it's like if you use your time well now with in parts, you don't have to feel like I'm never going to get there because it takes forever. So you can just go through the parts. Eventually, it's not like that. Just like driving your car, you now know what to do. You get in your car, you know how to drive it. You don't have to really sit there and go, have I checked the rear view mirror? Have I checked the side mirrors? Am I in park? Am I, all the gazillion things you have to remember. So, but just these parts. And then when you hit on something where you have that experience of warmth arise, you want to sit with that a minute, be there. Don't judge it, don't try to feed it, just experience it. Well, then so we'll be, going into the details of it. So and then we have another method that we'll go into, which is called equalizing self and others. And it has sort of a different technique, a different logic that's being used to equanimity, which I just love. I just think it's brilliant. So, we'll go through those steps as well. And it doesn't rely on this idea that everybody's been your mother. So there's hope yet, if that just turns you off. But it relies on this idea that self and other is just a point of view. It's, that we all have the same name called I. And we're all the same, wanting to be happy and not suffer. So we'll go through those steps as well. But next week we'll work on this particular version.
When you send meditations, do you send people meditations, or how do I get on that list?
I just need you to give me your email address.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you didn't receive the readings last week, if you weren't here last week, I won't have it either. But I can forward it to you. So just come up to me and I'll get your email address. So. And we do this, we email them because a lot of people use their electronics to just do it, they just read these on their phone. I mean, Jack does everything on his phone, I don't know how he reads that whole thing, but he does. So, so that we don't, so if you don't want to print things out, you don't do, the trees are still there, don't print them out. But, and also, Dharma is not supposed to be treated like grocery list. So when you're done with the Dharma, you don't throw it in the trash. There's a whole ritual around it. So if you don't use it, we're not leaving you with all these reams of paper that, so that's my excuse and I'm sticking with it. So when I left Australia, because this was, all of more than 10 years ago, so we had reams of paper. Gosh, time changes fast. And so I'm leaving Australia. I can't afford to ship it home, right? I mean, it's heavy. Paper's heavy. And according to Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you're supposed to burn Dharma. You're supposed to do a ritual visualizing all the words, lifting off the page and going out to the winds like prayer flags, that it's carried on the wind so that you're not actually throwing away the paper, and you're supposed to burn it. Well, I'm not gonna burn it. I'm sorry. It's too environmentally terrible. I cannot go there. So I had this dilemma. I'm a nun. I have reams of paper. I can't afford to bring it back with me. So what to do? I'm so grateful for electronic media. So I found a recycle place that hired people with disabilities who sorted it, shredded everything, and I did the ritual of, as I handed it over to them. So it got recycled. So, so it's just this, what I appreciate about that practice is its opportunity for being thoughtful. I mean, the Dharma just teaches us all sorts of ways to be mindful of things, and to be, like we have it so easy with access. And you think about the times where they literally had to just hand copy every page. When they left Tibet, when they went into exile from Tibet, each one of the monks carried one text, to carry over the Himalayas. And that's it. So all those texts had to be copied by hand. And in fact, the first step was, since, the monks, they were stuck in Buxar, in this old prisoner of war camp. 10 years. But they continued with their studies, so they all had to memorize this text. Because they had one copy of each one. So, you know, it's really like, you know, incredible how fortunate we are, and, you know, so it's cool. It's cool to try to think about, you know, these things. So, questions? I know it's late. One of, I think, the fun things to think about in the meditation is to think about how, if it's true, not that you have to think it's true, just if it's true, hypothetically, that we've existed for beginningless time. You know how they talk about how all matter in our galaxy or universe, or I don't know, I don't even know what term they use now, can be traced back to the matter at the Big Bang,
Yes.
you know, and that we all, you know, so all the elements of our bodies, the earth element, the water, all that stuff can be traced back to the Big Bang, you know. So it's not a far-fetched idea that our consciousness has also been that way. You know, it's not physical like the body, but we have precedence. Matter is like that. It doesn't go away, it just changes form. You know? So, you know, according to Buddhism, we just keep changing our guest house. The consciousness has existed, and sometimes we've been in, you know, the guest house of a mosquito body, and other times it's been a human body, and other times it's been a fish, you know, and other times it's been somebody on some other planet, world system, who knows what it looked like, you know. But we have this, our ignorance comes from this. As soon as we have this sense of self, we think other. We immediately separate ourselves from everybody else. And so one way to look at that is just looking at, you know, this idea that, why do I think this is my body? When did it become my body? If all of its parts, the elements, you know, all that can be traced back to the Big Bang, when did it become mine?
Thought I am.
You know, when did, you know, it not cease to be parts of my parents in this life and become mine? You know, that we, you know, this insistence on somehow there is this me, and this is my body, is part of our problem. Is that we really stay fixed in this kind of place instead of recognizing that everything is, you know, what's happened is this body arose out of all the causes and conditions had to come together since the Big Bang for this body to arise. All of us have been involved in that. I mean, to think that this body is somehow never been your body or part of your body is ridiculous. You know, we're all made of the same stuff. So this sense of separation is faulty. We are so interconnected, interdependent, in thinking that our happiness has nothing to do with others' happiness is misguided. So it's this, you know, trying to really loosen our grip on this little, like, you know, this is my world. Don't get too close, please. You know, but really understanding just how interdependent we are. And that all of our, you know, all of the causes and conditions that came together for all of us individuals to be in this room at this time with these colored walls and with these cushions and these chairs, and, you know, how many things had to happen for this to, all the causes and conditions to exist for this to arise? How many people were involved? You know, it's the same water Cleopatra drank. I mean, it's outrageous to think about that we have no new water. I just find that wild, because I grasp it as self. So, you know, we want to really loosen that grip so that we don't see ourselves as separate from each other. You know, to really start to understand that just like, you know, when one part of my body hurts, the rest of my body naturally tries to help it. We can see every sentient being as part of us. And if one of them is suffering, we can try to help. You know, that we're all part of beings with minds. There's, you know, we all have the same name. You know, and recognizing that this sense of separation is an illusion created by our particular form of eyeballs and all this stuff, because we're not electron microscopes and we can't see all the interaction. We know that our speech and even our body language and our moods impact each other. You know, if someone comes in and is a raving lunatic angry, that's going to affect all of us in here. We are very interdependent. So so we need to take care of our part, the part we can, which is our minds. So the more we can just kind of loosen that grip on the way we label things and then hold them to be that, when it's going to change, the more we can work with this practice. So let's rejoice that you spent Valentine's Day, this Valentine's Day, you know, working on your mind here with a bunch of people who might seem like strangers but really aren't, you know. So you met them so many times in the past. You know, and think, okay, hopefully this was, you know, this will prove useful to your mind. And if nothing else, you've explored some things. Anything we do to look at something from a different angle loosens our grip on our current perspective. So that can be helpful. We can learn from that. So that's good. So we can rejoice about that. And then we just want to, you know, if it's possible that our positive actions are going to yield positive results sometime in the future, that we don't want them to exhaust until all sentient beings are free of suffering. So we just put it all together in one great ocean of enlightenment potential for all sentient beings. And so you can bring to mind today, you know, all the students that this anniversary brings up for them. You know, have compassion. We know what it's like to be frightened, lose someone we love. We know what it's like to live in a world where this is, you know, where school shootings are even possible. And recognize this is, you know, and that many people have died today. I think I haven't forgotten, it's something like 272 people die every day in the U.S. or something. So there's 272 families suffering, but, you know. And we can rejoice in our own good conditions in this moment. And make the wish to create the cause to have many more moments of good conditions in order to be able to develop our minds, our hearts, in order to benefit others. So set a positive intention for whatever you're going to do next. say